Number 5 on this list is a prediction from Nostradamus. All of these prediction videos need at least one Nostradamus appearance, and this time we're going to be talking about how he's predicted an attack on the human race from artificial intelligence. Nostradamus had a very famous collection of poetic quatrains called the Prophecies, which dictate things to come in our world. He's certainly been proven wrong several times, but has also had his fair share of correct guesses as well. This specific poetic quatrain is as follows: robots will destroy mankind. Those of Lake Geneva and of Masson all assembled against those of Aquitaine, many Germans, many more Swiss. They will be routed along with those of the humane. So breaking this down a little bit, he says that robots will destroy mankind. And I mean, I feel like that's pretty straightforward what he's trying to say there. But then he talks about Geneva, Masson, and Aquitaine, which are all regions in France, and then Germany and Switzerland. He says that they will die along with the humane, so people. Now, I'm not really sure why he felt it necessary to specify those specific people and places if robots are meant to take over the entire world, but potentially they'll be attacked first. AI is getting more and more advanced every single day, and it is proven that it can be vastly smarter than a human being. Providing this AI with consciousness is something that is still a work in progress, but many scientists, billionaires, experts on the subject, they all believe that AI will one day rule the world. From what I've heard so far, I honestly tend to agree with them. However, I don't think that it will be a great war with laser beams and an actual battlefield like some may be predicting. I think that if they're gonna beat us, it's gonna be in a different way. I could definitely see something like this taking place though. I'm not sure if it's gonna happen in 2022, but with the way that technology is advancing, I mean, I definitely can't rule it out. Number 4 on this list is the eruption of Yellowstone. For those of you who don't know, Yellowstone is a supervolcano that is located in Wyoming in the United States. Now, I know that the term supervolcano sounds like the coolest thing in the entire world, but I promise you that things wouldn't be super cool if this thing ever exploded. In fact, things would get very hot very fast. A supervolcano's explosion is thousands of times more powerful than that of a regular volcano and extremely deadly. That's because this volcano is fed by several miles of hot magma underneath the surface. Now the magma, although it would be major and annihilate everything in the surrounding area, that wouldn't actually be the biggest problem with this thing erupting. It would be the ash. If Yellowstone was to erupt, then practically the entire United States and parts of Canada would get covered in several feet of ash, rock, glass. This would be enough to kill millions of people, destroy all of the crops and agriculture in the area, destroy electrical lines, buildings, it would destroy a lot. All of this ash would have a dramatic effect on the air that we breathe as well. This could become extremely toxic to us and would then further kill millions of people. It would also have a huge impact on climate change too, and not in a good way. An explosion of this caliber would be so devastating that it's hard to even comprehend. Now the positive here is that most experts don't believe that Yellowstone is set to have an eruption like this for thousands of years. However, that hasn't stopped people from predicting that Yellowstone is going to explode this year or the next year or maybe even the year after that. In all honesty, even though scientists have a pretty good understanding of this, we never really know the full story. Yellowstone could just erupt whenever it feels like it, and there would be absolutely nothing that we can do about it. For now, we just have to hope that the experts got this one right and that we're safe for a little while, because living in an apocalyptic ash world, not my idea of a good time. Number 3 on this list is another one coming in from Nostradamus. It's actually insane how many predictions this guy made. He almost touched 1,000. This one though doesn't relate to a major AI attack, but has to do with the demolition of our world in a different way. A big meteor shower that could cause some cataclysmic disasters. Nostradamus writes, very near Auch, Lecture, and Mirande, a great fire will fall from the sky for 3 nights. The cause will appear both stupefying and marvelous. Shortly afterwards, there will be an earthquake. So once again, let's break down what Nostradamus is saying here. The places that he listed are all areas of France. Now he believes that this great fire from the sky, as he puts it, will happen very close to these areas. This will happen for 3 straight nights, and I can only assume that it won't only be the night, but he's probably talking about the full 72 hours of 3 days. This great fire will then cause an earthquake. Now, nowhere in here does he say specifically that the entire planet will burn or fall apart during this great fire. But if we were to experience asteroids hitting the Earth for 72 hours straight, and assuming that they were large enough to cause an earthquake to happen, then I don't see any way that our planet could possibly survive an event like this. If these veered off enough to land in the ocean, then the tidal waves that this could cause would be massive. Not to mention the damage to the people of France. Obviously, this is all dependent on the size of the asteroids that are hitting the Earth, but like I said, if they're big enough to cause an earthquake, we are probably all going to die in some massive natural disaster caused by these things hitting the planet for 72 hours straight. Number 2 on this list is a massive all-out nuclear war. This isn't a prediction from just one person, but by tons of people. A nuclear weapon has been used twice during warfare in human history, both times by the United States against Japan in 1945. Even though 2 doesn't seem like a lot, that is still way more times than this weapon ever should have been used. That is simply due to the absolutely catastrophic damage that a nuclear weapon can cause. This damage comes from the initial mushroom cloud explosion that vaporizes and burns anything in its radius, and then also the massive fallout of radiation from an explosion of this size. The radiation poisoning will last for years and years and is so detrimental to humans and the environment. The 2 times that the bomb was used was so disastrous that no one has used one ever since to target humans. However, that doesn't mean that we didn't continue to make them. Right now, the world is home to roughly 14,000 of these weapons. This number is honestly ridiculous, and even though it's been slowly dropping as people disarm them, it is still enough to completely annihilate the planet. Experts estimate that any nation that fired 100 of these weapons on somebody would actually begin harming their own nation by doing it. Not only would this completely destroy whatever country was the recipient of 100 nuclear bombs, but the environmental pushback would be so costly that the country who released them would have mass deaths of their own. The amount of soot and ash that would fill the skies would cool the planet dramatically, as the rays of the sun would then bounce off of them. Lack of natural sunlight caused by all of the ash and the reduced precipitation that it would cause would greatly impact the growth of food. So much so that the experts believe most countries, they couldn't feed themselves. Basically, 100 nuclear weapons exploding is the magic number when it comes to world-ending scenarios. Nuclear war isn't guaranteed to happen, but rumblings of World War III have been going on for quite some time. The state of the Middle East is troubling to say the least, and I for one would not be surprised if somehow things escalated to a point where these weapons got involved and we blew all of humanity into oblivion. Let's cross our fingers and hope that the people with the power to push the button think twice before doing so. Number 1 on this list is the melting of the ice caps. Ice caps are large, thick pieces of ice that cover big areas of land located at the North and South Poles. There are billions of tons of ice in both locations, home to many species. However, this stuff is melting, and it's melting really fast. In fact, people estimate that every single year we are losing anywhere from 750 billion to about 1.3 trillion tons of ice. Put that number in perspective, folks. 1 ton is 2,000 pounds, and we are losing 1 trillion of those. That number is so extremely large that our human brains can't even really fathom what that looks like. This isn't slowing down either. People believe that 2022 could see a massive jump in the amount of ice that is about to melt. Now, maybe you're thinking, it's just ice, why does it matter? Well, it matters because if all of this ice melts in the world, then New York City, Tokyo, Beijing, St. Petersburg, almost the entire state of Florida, these will be completely submerged in water. Island nations will be destroyed, the Central Americas won't really exist anymore, and climate change will skyrocket because our natural cooling system, the ice, will all be gone. This is already happening in some places as well. Tuvalu is a Pacific island nation that is starting to evacuate their people to New Zealand because their entire country is getting flooded. Millions and millions will die, and millions more will become homeless. Ecosystems will fall flat, and agriculture will suffer. The climate will continue to skyrocket, and there will be no coming back from it after that. This also isn't even factoring in the diseases that could be released from these glaciers, because I've already covered those those in another video. This is real and is happening right now and will assuredly continue to get far worse in 2022. It truly is an end of the world scenario and needs to be addressed immediately. Number 5 on this list is Malthusianism. Malthusianism is an idea created by Thomas Robert Malthus that looks at the human population growth and its relationship to food consumption. The premise of the theory is reasonably simple. Basically, population growth will grow exponentially, but the production of food can only ever be linear. If the population grows exponentially and food production is linear, then there will eventually be a point reached where not everyone on the planet can get food. This is called the Malthusian catastrophe and the doomsday scenario that we're going to be looking at. Malthus writes about this extensively in his essay on the principle of population. Ever since he wrote about this theory, people have debated its validity for centuries, with scientists being on both sides of the argument. It's even led some extremists to rally for population control, basically meaning that we thin the herd so we never reach this world-ending scenario. There are some counter-arguments to Malthusianism, with the biggest one being human innovation. When Malthus lived, he never had the means of growing food like we have today, and our innovation continues to grow as time goes on. That being said, around 9 million people die from hunger every year, so I wouldn't be surprised if this catastrophe started to materialize in 2022. Now, I should note that it wouldn't be an immediate thing where all of a sudden everyone is hungry. It would take years to see the full-scale effects of the population shaving itself off due to hunger. However, we've talked extensively about climate change on this channel before and the scary effects that it's currently having on the planet, and food is one of them. Climate change isn't making it any easier to grow food. In fact, the rising temperatures are making it far harder in some places. In the areas where it's already so hot to begin with, it's become increasingly more difficult to grow crops due to the lack of water. This is made to be an even bigger problem as well, because typically the places that are already hotter to begin with are the areas of the world that suffer from famine the most. All of this being said, our ability to grow food due to climate change is becoming harder. Our growth in population, though, isn't slowing down at all. If you take a look at any global population chart, then you will see that our growth is exactly as Malthus suggested: exponential. It's very possible that 2022 is the year that we see the scales tip, and due to all these factors, enter into the Malthusian catastrophe. Number 4 on this list is an asteroid. The idea of an asteroid smashing into the Earth has been something explored in the media and pop culture pretty much ever since we realized that's what killed the dinosaurs. Now, I shouldn't state that as fact because it isn't 100% confirmed, but that is most scientists' working theory right now. They believe that a celestial object crashed into the Earth, and that caused the climate on our planet to change so dramatically that the dinosaur species couldn't survive any longer. David Morrison of the National Aeronautics and Space Administration's Ames Research Center talks about the impacts of an asteroid hitting Earth further, where he says, "The effects of an impact on the Earth depends critically on the size and hence the energy of the impact. For example, a comet less than 100 meters across will explode high in the atmosphere and probably do no harm whatsoever. If the comet is 10 kilometers across or larger," and then in brackets he says, "that is if the impact carries an energy of more than 100 million megatrons," and bracket, "the resulting global environmental damage will be so extensive that it will lead to a mass extinction in which most life forms will die. The environmental consequences of a giant impact take many forms. The worst effects come from a global firestorm ignited by backfalling impact debris and from global pall of darkness that lasts for many months due to the dust suspended in the stratosphere." So obviously an asteroid coming to Earth, if it was a large enough size, would be horrible and likely mean the end of all human life as we know it. As of right now, though, we look to be in the clear because there hasn't been any reports from scientists detailing an asteroid that's on trajectory to Earth, but some people have conspiracy theories surrounding that. It's been speculated upon that even if scientists saw an asteroid was on its way to Earth, that this wouldn't be released to the public. Similar to how people think the government has covered up the existence of aliens, they also believe that a world-ending scenario like this would be swept under the rug as well. This is because mass chaos would ensue if we all knew that we were going to die. I tend to put my faith in science when it comes to stuff like this, but crazy things in the universe happen all the time, and an asteroid hitting us might just be one of them. Number 3 on this list is a solar shutdown. Back in the 1970s, the study of the galaxy and space was at the forefront of everyone's minds. We were learning a lot about our universe and how the laws of physics operate in space.
We were also learning a lot about our sun, the most important thing to us in our living solar system. During this time though, we made an unsettling discovery about it, something that if proven true would end all life as we know it. This is called a solar shutdown. A solar shutdown is when a star, like our sun, doesn't operate at its full power, but its activity level drops. This activity level could drop as much as 40% compared to what it's doing now. The reason that they theorized this is because the sun wasn't emitting as many neutrinos, a particle associated with solar activity. As more research came out, paleontologists have found evidence that this happened roughly 650 million years ago in a period that they refer to as the snowball Earth. They call it snowball Earth because Earth was basically one big ball of ice. If the sun was to lose 40% of its power, then the oceans would all freeze over and all life on Earth would cease to exist. The problem is, there's no way we would ever be able to stop this or do anything about it. We also wouldn't know that it's happening until it's actually transpiring right in front of us, because there's no way to predict it. The sun means literally everything to us, and a dip in its activity by just a little bit would mean our slow demise. We just gotta hope that 2022 isn't the year that it decides to slow down. Number 2 on this list is a massive cyber attack. Ever since the introduction of nuclear weapons, humans have always had those at the forefront of our minds when it comes to massive world-ending scenarios. However, we need to start shifting our thinking a little bit. A cyber attack could be just as deadly, if not more so, than a nuclear war, and it's honestly far more likely in my opinion. Since the beginning of the internet and online activity, the capability of someone being able to remotely hack into someone else's computer and steal information, that's all been possible. It's also possible to remotely hack into someone's computer and control things on said computer. This has happened many times in the past and on some extremely high-profile companies too. For instance, in 1999, Jonathan James hacked into NASA and the US Defense Department. He was able to install a backdoor into the computers, which then gave him access to tons of classified information like passwords to military computers. The craziest part about all of this was that Jonathan was 15 years old when he did this. It's really not a reassuring thought when a 15-year-old is capable of hacking into NASA and the US Defense Department. If a terror group was to do something like this, then the power they could possess could be endless. They could remotely launch nuclear weapons at will. They could shut down power to everyone on the planet who might be on life support. They could honestly do almost anything they wanted and launch the world into a complete disaster. This is one of the ones on this list that I fear the most of all. We just have to hope that the firewalls of these high-profile companies are stronger than they were in 1999. Number 1 on this list is the equation. This entry is really interesting and something that's widely debated in the scientific community. Richard Gott III was an astrophysicist and is one of the founders of the equation that ultimately predicts when the human race will end. He first got enthralled about the idea of creating a math equation to predict the future when he did that very thing in terms of the Berlin Wall. He predicted that the Berlin Wall would fall within 2.5 and 24 years. He was correct, and it did in fact go down within that time frame. He then took the equation that he did that with and, along with some other physicists, attempted to apply the same equation to the existence of humans. The time frame isn't as long as we may hope though. In fact, this math equation gives even odds that the human race will no longer exist from right now until 760 years from now. So that means that next year is very much in the time frame that we could all die out. Now the way that this equation works, you don't actually know how the human race is going to end, just the time frame that it's going to happen. This is part of the reason why some other scientists have refuted this theory, because they believe that the equation can't possibly be correct if you have an unknown variable causing the actual extinction. As far as we're concerned, we kind of just need to hope that they're right and God was wrong, because even if next year isn't the one where it all comes crashing down, 760 years still isn't that much time left on the clock.
Number 5 on this list is the rise of artificial intelligence. The moon in the full of night over the high mountain, the new sage with a lone brain sees it. By his disciples invited to be immortal, eyes to the south, hands in bosoms, bodies in the fire. That was a poem from the one and only Nostradamus. Probably the most famous prophesizer of all time, if that's even a thing. Nostradamus was a French astrologer and seer and is most known for his work called The Prophecies, where he pops the heck off and prophesizes pretty much the entire world's future. This poetic quatrain that I read is from that book, and people believe it to be in reference to artificial intelligence taking over. Right now, AI is definitely the craze. Pretty much any billionaire who's anybody is currently investing insane amounts of money into AI, thinking it'll be the way of the future. At the same time though, a lot of them are coming out and warning us about how dangerous this could be when AI is able to get consciousness. Well, in this poem, Nostradamus says the new sage with a lone brain sees it, and people think that's in reference to AI getting consciousness. This is the new sage and it can only know. Then he goes on to say that there are bodies in the fire and all that jazz, and that just really doesn't sound like a fun time at all. Experts still think that we're a ways away from getting AI to reach full consciousness, but they're pretty much all in agreement that it's going to happen one day. They're also pretty much in agreement that computers and robots will be smarter than humans because they can just take in more information and process data way quicker than we would ever be able to. Comment down below when you think AI is going to start causing serious problems for humans. Is it in 2022, or do we still have a bit more time left? Number 4 on this list is the rapture. The rapture is another one of those doomsday predictions that's been thrown around for what seems like ever. According to Wikipedia, the rapture is an eschatological theological position held by some Christians, particularly within branches of American evangelicalism, consisting of an end-time event when all Christian believers who are alive, along with resurrected believers, would rise in the clouds to meet the Lord in the air. Basically what this means is that for those devout Christian followers, life is going to get pretty awesome, but for everyone else, life on earth is going to suck. People have speculated that the earth would turn into a hell-like place where demons roam the streets. As you can probably imagine, this would be pretty bad and wouldn't be the greatest existence ever. The rapture has been discussed as a possibility for years now, but the most recent claim has it pegged for 2028. Granted, this is always changing, and it feels like at any given year, someone is prophesizing that the rapture could be coming. At this rate, it feels like it could come tomorrow, but nobody really knows. If the rapture was to happen though, no reason to think that 2022 couldn't be the year. Number 3 is an asteroid. Now, an asteroid hitting Earth has been talked about as a potential doomsday world-ending scenario for pretty much as long as we've been aware of asteroids. We've talked a lot about this on this channel before, and depending on the size of asteroid, the entire planet could be totally wiped out. In fact, this has gotten some more attention in pop culture recently with the movie Don't Look Up. Starring Leonardo DiCaprio and Jennifer Lawrence, the whole movie is about a massive asteroid coming to Earth and potentially killing all of us if it hits. Well, according to the Messiah Foundation International, we only have a few years left before this becomes a sad and terrifying reality. 2026 is the year to mark on the calendar, folks, only 4 years from now. Riaz Ahmad Gohar Shadi was a spiritual leader who's credited with starting up the Messiah Foundation International. He wrote a book called The Religion of God, and in that book he's predicted 2026 as being the year the world is going to get hit with a massive celestial object. This object would be big enough to destroy the whole planet and all life on Earth. Now, I looked into this prophecy, and from what I found, I think we should be okay. Most experts who study space think that we have quite some time before we need to start worrying about such things. The closest thing that we're currently aware of is an asteroid called 2010 RF12. This is apparently the asteroid with the highest probability of hitting Earth, with about a 5% chance of doing so. However, this also isn't supposed to occur until 2095, giving us plenty of time to prepare. Now, I'm gonna be honest, who really knows with this stuff? Space is pretty crazy and we're learning new things every day. Maybe there is an asteroid we're unaware of, or that scientists haven't revealed to the public that's coming to Earth, and for that reason I suppose that this prophecy might happen. But if it does, then at least we still have 4 years to plan for it, and hopefully we'll just avoid it altogether. Number 2 on this list is World War III. This is something that hasn't just been prophesized by one person, but by multiple. However, if we did want to put this on one guy, then our main man Nostradamus is back at it again because he's been noted as predicting a third world war in 2022. A great article by the Daily Record talks about this possibility when they write, "There are serious concerns over a possible global war in the coming year, and one possible cause could be the ongoing tensions between China and Taiwan. The incursions from nuclear-capable Chinese warplanes has ratcheted up tensions over the tiny US-backed island. Relations between the two nations are at the worst in 40 years, Taiwan's defense minister said at the end of last year. Western allies of Taiwan have expressed their concern at China's open display of military might, and it's widely feared any form of armed confrontation could quickly escalate into a global conflict. Meanwhile, Russia has reportedly approved plans for urgent mass graves amid fears a war could break out after an invasion of Ukraine. Russian outlet MK say that the burial sites were constructed as a priority after they allegedly appeared on leaked legal documents that are expected to come into force on February 1st. Those are just some of the possible scenarios where something major could start, but there are also tons of other areas in the world in disarray right now where I could see something horrible taking place. All it would require is a few frustrated people deciding to push the button, and then bam, we're at a place of no return and might damage our planet beyond repair. Hopefully all of this won't come to fruition, and those who have the power to send us into war will exercise their power to also keep us out of it. Number 1 on this list is a lethal virus. Known as the Nostradamus of the Balkans, the blind mystic Baba Vanga has some very scary things coming in 2022 for humans. One of the worst ones, and probably most triggering at this point, is a massive lethal virus attacking Earth. After several years of being in a pandemic, I think it's safe to say that humans are pretty tired of lethal diseases. Baba Vanga isn't holding back on us though, and she expects this one to be really bad. It's apparently going to come from Siberia and will all start due to global warming. Now this honestly might not be that far off at all, which makes it that much more scarier. Guarantee BBVA writes, in August 2016, in a remote corner of Siberian tundra called the Yamal Peninsula in the Arctic Circle, an individual died and at least 20 people were hospitalized after being infected by anthrax. The theory is that over 75 years ago, a reindeer infected with anthrax died and its frozen carcass became trapped under a layer of frozen soil known as permafrost. There it stayed until a heat wave in the summer of 2016 when the permafrost thawed. This exposed the reindeer corpse and released infectious anthrax into nearby water and soil and then into the food supply. More than 2,000 reindeer grazing nearby became infected, which then led to the small number of human cases. The fear is that this will not be an isolated case. As the earth warms, more permafrost will melt. Under normal circumstances, superficial permafrost layers about 50 centimeters deep melt every summer. But now global warming is gradually exposing older permafrost layers. Frozen permafrost soil is the perfect place for bacteria to remain alive for very long periods of time, perhaps as long as 1 million years. That means melting ice could potentially open up a Pandora's box of diseases. So Baba Vanga might sadly be onto something here, and that could just be horrible. There could be diseases that are frozen that we just don't know anything about and might absolutely ravage the population. Honestly guys, we just need to pray that our immunities can hold up if something like this did ever happen.